There's a simplicity and a beauty to a sailboat, and a peacefulness, no engine, just riding along on the power of the wind. And the Holy Spirit works in a little bit like that. He's the wind in our sails. And so right there, as John's sharing his testimony, he just slips in this little phrase at the beginning of verse 10. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. Now, some people think that means John was in an ecstatic trance, similar to what non-Christian prophets in the ancient world would enter, like the oracle at Delphi or something, some kind of drugged out trance or something. But that kind of behavior is not consistent with the biblical description of the work of the Holy Spirit. Right? Paul describes the Spirit's work in Ephesians 5:18 through 19 by saying, do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. Here's what that leads to: addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart. So it's always important to grasp that being filled with the Spirit doesn't mean being out of control. It's just the opposite. To be filled with the Spirit is to have your mind focused on God. There's a parallel passage over in Colossians 3 where Paul describes the same result, the same outcome, admonishing one another and singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs as a result of letting the word of Christ dwell richly in us. That's how the Spirit works. He brings to mind the truth. He convicts us and helps us to understand and obey God's truth. So when John says here, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, I don't think he's talking about something unique that only happened to apostles or prophets. I think he's just talking about worship. He mentions the Lord's Day. He's probably talking about Sunday, the day when Jesus rose from the dead. Even in the early church, we see from some of Paul's letters, specifically to the Corinthians, that believers were already gathering to worship on the first day of the week. And so John was just responding to Jesus walking with the Lord as we all should, in this attitude, this mindset of worship. And yet we know that worship is not just about a weekly gathering or a single day. That was the day that John happens to be talking about. That's when this encounter happens. But you can be in the Spirit. You should be in the Spirit all the time. Worship is a way of life. Think of these words in Romans 12:1, where Paul says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. That's not something that just happens, when you show up for church. It's how you approach work on Monday morning. It's how you interact with your spouse or family or someone you meet out as you go through your day. That you're living as this living sacrifice to the Lord. Now, in John's vision, he sees Jesus dressed, in some sense, as a great high priest. That kind of fits with this sacrificial terminology that Paul uses here in Romans 12. Are we offering up our praise and our devotion to Jesus in gratitude for his saving work? We should do that all the time.